What would you do if the only family you had left tried to sell you like property, and the man who bought you had no intention of using you, but instead wanted to give you something you'd never had: safety, belonging, and love? In the bitter cold of Montana's wilderness, one girl's fate changes forever the moment a stranger steps in. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from, and why you're following this. The bitter January wind howled through the small mining town of Pine Creek, Montana, 1885. 12-year-old Emma Lancaster huddled beneath a threadbare blanket in the corner of her uncle's cabin, straining to hear the conversation beyond the thin wooden door. Since her parents' death from influenza last spring, she'd been living with her Uncle Walter, a man whose gambling habits had grown worse with each passing month. "I ain't got the money, Donovan," Walter's voice cracked with panic. "Give me another week. You've had 3 weeks already," came the cold reply. $500. That was our agreement." Emma shivered, but not from the cold. Her uncle's footsteps paced frantically across the worn floorboards. "I got something better than money," Walter said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "My brother's girl. She's young, healthy, good worker, pretty too." A long silence followed. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she feared they might hear it through the door. "I ain't in the market for that kind of arrangement," the man named Donovan replied, disgust evident in his tone. "Not like that," Walter said hastily. "She could work for you. Cook, clean, whatever you need. Worth more than what I owe you. I don't need a child. Then sell her contract to someone who does. Logging camps are always looking for cooks, or maybe one of them fancy houses in Helena, ... Emma pressed her hands against her mouth to stifle a sob. Her uncle was trying to sell her to pay his gambling debts. The bitter reality crashed over her like ice water. She wasn't family to him, she was property. "Maybe I know someone," Donovan said finally. "Big Jack Miller runs a logging operation up north. Lost his wife years back. Might be willing to take her on." "Good. Bring him here tomorrow. We'll settle this debt once and for all." Emma spent the night with her eyes wide open, contemplating escape. But where would she go? Winter in Montana was merciless, and she had no money, no relatives. By morning, her fate seemed sealed. Big Jack Miller arrived with the noon sun. From her hiding spot behind the door, Emma could see only a portion of him, a giant of a man with a beard as wild as a grizzly's and hands like ham hocks. His voice, however, was surprisingly gentle. "So this is about the girl?" he asked, removing his hat as he stepped inside. "She's a good worker," Walter said, his voice oily with desperation. "Strong for her age, can cook decent enough." "And where is she?" "Emma," Walter bellowed. "Get in here, girl." Her legs felt like lead as she forced herself to enter the room. She kept her eyes downcast, afraid to look at the giant who might be her new owner. "Look up, child," the big man said. "Let me see you." Reluctantly, Emma raised her gaze. Big Jack Miller's face was weathered like old leather, but his eyes were kind, far kinder than her uncle's had ever been. "What's your name, girl?" he asked. "Emma Lancaster, sir." "How old are you, Emma?" 12, sir." 13 come April." Jack nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Donovan. 500, you said?" "That's the debt," Donovan confirmed. Jack reached into his coat and produced a leather pouch. He counted out the money carefully, placing it on the table. "I'll take her," he said. Walter's relief was palpable. "She's all yours then. Good riddance." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give her uncle the satisfaction. "Get your things, Emma," Jack said gently. "We've got a long ride ahead." She had precious little to gather: a small bundle of clothes, a tattered book of fairy tales her mother had read to her, and a silver locket containing a tiny portrait of her parents. Within minutes she was ready. Outside, a horse-drawn wagon waited. Jack helped her climb aboard, then covered her with a thick buffalo robe. "It's a cold ride to the lumber camp," he explained, climbing up beside her. Keep yourself warm." As the wagon pulled away, Emma finally allowed herself one backward glance. Walter stood in the doorway, already counting the money, not sparing a single look for the niece he had just sold. She turned away, facing forward toward whatever future awaited her with this stranger, who had bought her for $500. "I know you're scared," Jack said after they'd traveled in silence for nearly an hour. "But I want you to know something. Emma, I didn't buy you to be a servant." Emma looked up at him, confusion clear in her eyes. "I lost my daughter, Sarah, to the same fever that likely took your parents," Jack continued, his voice thick with emotion. "She'd be about your age now. When Donovan told me about you, I thought, well, maybe we could help each other." "I don't understand," Emma whispered. "I'm offering you a home, Emma. A real home. Not as a servant, but as my daughter, if you'll have me as your father." For the first time since her parents died, Emma felt a tiny spark of hope flickering the life within her heart. The journey to Jack Miller's logging camp took 2 days, winding through snow-covered mountain passes and dense pine forests. Emma remained quiet for most of the trip, answering Jack's occasional questions with polite brevity, still unsure what to make of this giant of a man and his unexpected offer. "There it is," Jack announced late on the second day, pointing to a cluster of wooden buildings nestled in a valley below. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and even from a distance, Emma could hear the rhythmic sound of axes striking wood. Timber Creek, home. As they approached, men in heavy woolen coats stopped their work to wave at Jack's wagon. Emma shrank deeper into her seat, uncomfortable with so many eyes upon her. "Don't worry," Jack reassured her. "They're good men. Rough around the edges perhaps, but good-hearted." The wagon rolled to a stop before the largest of the buildings, a 2-story log structure with a wide porch. "This is my home," Jack explained, helping Emma down. "The cookhouse is there, bunkhouses over yonder, and the mill's down by the creek." A burly man with a salt and pepper beard approached them. "Welcome back, boss," he said, before his eyes settled curiously on Emma. "Thomas, this is Emma," Jack said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "She'll be staying with us from now on." "Emma, this is Thomas Blackwood, my foreman." Thomas tipped his hat respectfully. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Emma. Thomas, get the men together at the cookhouse after supper. I've got an announcement to make." Inside, Jack's home was surprisingly comfortable, simple but warm, with sturdy wooden furniture and colorful quilts. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, and bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that immediately caught Emma's attention. "You like books?" Jack asked, noticing her gaze. "My mother taught me to read," Emma replied softly. "Before she died," Jack nodded. "Sarah loved books too. Her room is upstairs. That's where you'll stay." He led her up a narrow staircase to a small bedroom. It was clearly a girl's room, with a patchwork quilt on the bed and a small wooden doll sitting on the windowsill. Everything was neat and clean, but there was something poignant about the preserved space. "I haven't changed anything since she passed," Jack admitted. "Perhaps that wasn't right. We can make it yours now. Change whatever you like." Emma touched the quilt gently. "It's lovely as it is." That evening, after a simple meal of venison stew and cornbread prepared by Jack himself, they made their way to the cookhouse. Nearly 30 lumberjacks had gathered, their curious gazes following Emma as she entered beside Jack. "Men," Jack's voice boomed through the room, bringing immediate silence. "This is Emma Lancaster. She's come to live with me permanently. From this day forward, she's to be considered my daughter in every way that matters." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Anyone who has a problem with that can collect their wages in the morning and move on," Jack continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Anyone who stays treats her with the same respect you'd show your own kin. Is that understood?" Chorus of "Yes, boss," echoed through the room. An older man with kind eyes stepped forward. "Miss Emma, I'm Doc Henry. Not a real doctor, mind you, but I patch these fellows up when they're careless with their axes." He offered his hand, which Emma shook tentatively. "If you ever need anything, my cabin's just beyond the mill." One by one, the men introduced themselves. Cook, a rotund man with a perpetual smile. Mason, the blacksmith. Young Peter, barely 17, and serving as the camp's message runner. And dozens more whose names blurred together in Emma's overwhelmed mind. Later that night, as Emma lay in Sarah's bed, her bed now, she heard a gentle knock at the door. "May I come in?" Jack asked. "Yes, sir," Emma answered, sitting up. Jack entered, carrying a small wooden box. "I have something for you." He placed the box beside her on the bed. "It belonged to Sarah, but I think she would want you to have it." Inside was a beautiful journal bound in soft leather, its pages blank and waiting. "For your thoughts," Jack explained. "The life you had is behind you now, Emma. What comes next is for you to write. Why are you doing this?" Emma finally asked the question that had been burning inside her since they left her uncle's cabin. "Why would you want me?" Jack's weathered face softened. "When I lost Sarah, I lost my purpose. These men, this camp, it wasn't enough anymore. When Donovan told me about you, sold by your own kin." He paused, his large hands clenched briefly into fists. "No child deserves that. And perhaps it's selfish of me, but I thought maybe we could heal each other." "I'm not Sarah," Emma whispered. "I know that," Jack said gently. "I don't want you to be Sarah. I want you to be Emma, safe, cared for, and given a chance to become whoever you're meant to be." After Jack left, Emma opened the journal and stared at the blank page. With trembling fingers, she reached for the pencil Jack had included in the box and wrote her first entry. "Today, I was sold for $500. But maybe, just maybe, I was also saved." The next morning, Emma woke to the sounds of the camp. Coming to life, men's voices, the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer, and the persistent chopping of axes in the forest. For a moment, she was disoriented, but then the events of the past days came flooding back. She dressed quickly in one of her old dresses, suddenly self-conscious about its threadbare state. When she descended the stairs, she found Jack at the stove, frying bacon. "Good morning," he greeted her. "I'm not much of a cook, I'm afraid. We usually take our meals at the cookhouse, but I thought you might prefer something quieter for your first morning." "I can cook," Emma offered, moving toward the stove. "Uncle Walter made me cook all his meals." Jack gently blocked her path. "You're not here to be a servant, Emma. You're here to be a child, my child." He served her a plate of slightly burned bacon and eggs, though I wouldn't object to cooking lessons sometime. "These poor eggs deserve better than my attempts." The joke, small as it was, brought a faint smile to Emma's lips, the first Jack had seen. It transformed her face, hinting at the happy child she might have been before grief and hardship had claimed her. "There's something else we need to discuss," Jack said as they ate. "Your education. There's no proper school nearby, but Doc Henry was a schoolteacher before he came to the timber country. He's agreed to tutor you." "Really?" Emma couldn't hide her excitement. "Really? We'll start tomorrow. Today, I thought I'd show you around the camp, introduce you properly to everyone." The tour of Timber Creek was overwhelming. The operation was far larger than Emma had imagined. The dozens of men working in different capacities, from the timber fallers in the forest to the sawyers at the mill. Jack was clearly respected, even revered, by his employees, and Emma noted how his demeanor changed subtly as he moved among them, authoritative but fair, firm but kind. At the cookhouse, the enormous man called Cook insisted on preparing a special lunch for the boss's new daughter, a title that still felt strange to Emma's ears. The meal was simple but delicious: rabbit stew with dumplings and fresh bread still warm from the oven. "You're too skinny," Cook declared, pushing a second helping toward her. "We'll fix that soon enough." As they ate, Emma noticed a small group of men enter the cookhouse, led by a tall, lean man with cold eyes. Unlike the others who had greeted Jack warmly, this man merely nodded curtly in their direction. "Who's that?" Emma whispered. "Victor Reed," Jack replied, his voice lowering. "Runs the rival logging operation across the ridge. Not sure what brings him here." Jack excused himself to speak with Reed, and though Emma couldn't hear their conversation, the tension between the two men was palpable. When Jack returned, his expression was troubled. "Everything all right?" Emma ventured to ask. "Just business," Jack replied, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing for you to worry about." That night, as Emma prepared for bed, she heard raised voices from downstairs. Creeping to the top of the stairs, she listened as Jack argued with Thomas, the foreman. "Reed's pushing into our territory," Thomas was saying. "The men saw his crews marking trees in the North Valley, our valley." "I know," Jack replied wearily. "He made me an offer today to buy us out. You refused, of course." "Of course. But he's not going to stop, Thomas. He's backed by the railroad barons. They want the entire forest. So what do? We hold our ground. This isn't just about timber. These men, they've built lives here. I won't let Reed destroy that." Emma retreated to her room, troubled by what she'd overheard. Just as she was beginning to feel safe, it seemed new threats were looming on the horizon. She opened her journal and wrote, "I thought my troubles ended when I left Uncle Walter's cabin, but perhaps they've only changed form. Jack saved me. Now I wonder if there's some way I can help save him and Timber Creek in return." Winter settled heavily over Timber Creek. Snow piled in drifts against the buildings, and icicles hung like crystal daggers from the eaves. Despite the harsh conditions, logging operations continued, though at a slower pace. For Emma, the passing weeks brought unexpected joys. Doc Henry proved to be a patient and enthusiastic teacher. 3 times a week, Emma sat at his kitchen table, absorbing lessons in mathematics, literature, and history. To everyone's surprise, she had a natural aptitude for numbers. "You've got a mathematical mind," Doc told her one afternoon as she quickly calculated a series of complex fractions. "Most folks struggle with these," Emma shrugged. "Numbers make sense. They don't change or lie." Doc exchanged a knowing glance with Jack, who often observed their lessons. They both recognized the child's comment for what it was, a reflection of the instability she'd endured before coming to Timber Creek. Life at the camp gradually fell into a comfortable rhythm. In the mornings, Emma helped cook prepare breakfast for the Lumberjacks, learning his recipes and techniques. After her lessons with Doc, she would often accompany Jack on his rounds of the operation, observing how he managed both the business and the men with fairness and wisdom. The Lumberjacks, initially awkward around the quiet girl, soon adopted her as a collective daughter. They carved her small wooden animals, taught her to identify different trees, and competed for her smiles with increasingly outlandish tall tailies during evening meals. "That Emma's good for the boss," Cook remarked to Thomas one evening as they watched Jack laughing at something the child had said. "Haven't seen him this alive since Sarah passed." "Good for all of us," Thomas agreed. "Camp feels more like a home with her here." But shadows loomed beyond their mountain haven. Victor Reed's men continued encroaching on Timber Creek's territory, and tensions between the rival camps grew. Jack tried to shield Emma from his worries, but she was observant beyond her years. One snowy afternoon in late February, Emma was helping cook inventory supplies when a commotion erupted outside. She rushed to the cookhouse door to see 2 of Jack's men half-carrying Thomas toward Doc's cabin, blood staining the snow beneath them. "What happened?" Cook demanded, hurrying to clear a path. "Reed's men," gasped one of the Lumberjacks, "caught Thomas marking our boundary line. Said he was trespassing on their claim." Emma's blood ran cold. She raced through the snow toward Doc's cabin, arriving just as they were laying Thomas on the examination table. His face was badly bruised, and he clutched his side in pain. "Emma, you shouldn't be here," Jack said when he spotted her in the doorway. "I want to help," she insisted. Doc Henry assessed the situation quickly. "Broken ribs for certain. Might be internal bleeding. Jack, I need hot water and clean cloths." "Emma, my medical kit is on that shelf." For the next hour, Emma assisted Doc as he treated Thomas's injuries, following instructions precisely and maintaining a calm that belied her youth. When they had done all they could, Thomas rested in a morphine-induced sleep. You did well, Doc told Emma as they washed blood from their hands. Ever thought about medicine as a calling? Enough of that, Jack interjected. She's still a child, Doc. Emma noticed Jack's hands trembling slightly as he pulled on his heavy coat. Where are you going? She asked. To have a word with Reed, he replied grimly. No, the force of Emma's exclamation surprised them all. That's what he wants. If you confront him now, while you're angry, something worse will happen. Jack stared at her, his expression conflicted. I can't let this stand, Emma. A man has to defend what's his. Then do it smart, she urged, not angry. A heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Jack removed his coat and sat heavily in Doc's armchair. When did you get so wise? Emma shrugged. Lived with a gambler. Learned to spot when emotions are being used against you. That evening, after checking on Thomas once more, Jack and Emma walked back to their cabin together through the moonlit snow. The camp was unusually quiet, the men subdued by the day's events. I'm calling a meeting tomorrow, Jack told her. Reed's pushing for a confrontation, hoping I'll do something foolish that will let him take over legally. We need to be smarter. What will you do? Jack sighed. I'm not sure yet. The railroad wants this land for the timber, but they also need access through the valley for their new line. Reed's promising them both. Emma was quiet for a moment, her mind working through the problem. You said once that your grandfather was friends with the Blackfoot tribe. Jack looked at her curiously. Yes, that's true. Sheaf-running elk considered him a brother. Why? Don't the tribes have to approve railroad routes through their territories? Even now? Jack stopped walking, staring at Emma with dawning realization. Yes, they do. The northern route Reed's proposing cuts through Blackfoot hunting grounds. They'd never approve it. But a route through the southern valley would avoid their lands entirely, Jack finished. Emma, that's brilliant. The railroad doesn't know the tribal politics. Reed's been feeding them what they want to hear. For the first time, Emma felt a surge of pride. She had contributed something valuable, used her mind to help protect her new home. That night, she wrote in her journal, Today I learned that sometimes fighting doesn't require fists or axes. Sometimes the strongest weapon is knowing something your enemy doesn't. The following weeks brought feverish activity to Timber Creek. Jack, taking Emma's insight to heart, dispatched Thomas, now recovered, to Helena with detailed maps showing both the contested northern route and an alternative southern passage that would satisfy the Blackfoot tribes. Meanwhile, Emma found herself drawn increasingly to Doc Henry's medical books. The old man, noticing her interest, began teaching her basic medical skills, how to clean and bandage wounds, set simple fractures, and identify common illnesses. Knowledge is never wasted, he told her when Jack expressed concern about her spending so much time on medicine. Besides, a logging camp can always use another pair of healing hands. March brought the first hints of spring longer days, melting snow, and the return of birdsong to the mountains. It also brought news from Helena. The railroad's sending representatives, Jack announced one evening. They want to see both routes for themselves before making a decision. When? Emma asked. 2 weeks' time. And they're bringing Reed with them. The camp came alive with preparations. Trails were cleared, maps refined, and arguments rehearsed. Even Emma contributed, using her mathematical skills to calculate timber yields from different sections of the forest, showing how Jack's sustainable approach would provide more lumber over time than Reed's clear-cutting methods. The night before the railroad delegation was due to arrive, Emma found Jack sitting alone on the porch, staring at the stars. Nervous? She asked, settling beside him. A bit, he admitted. Everything I've built is riding on tomorrow. Everything we've built, Emma corrected gently. Jack looked at her with surprise, then slow understanding. Yes, everything we've built. I've been meaning to ask you something, Emma said, her voice suddenly uncertain. If everything works out, will I still stay here? With you? Jack's expression softened. Emma, when I brought you here, it wasn't conditional on anything. You're my daughter now, if you want to be. Nothing changes that. I do want to be, she whispered. Jack wrapped a massive arm around her slender shoulders. Then it's settled. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it as family. As they sat in comfortable silence, Emma realized something profound had shifted inside her. The fear and uncertainty that had been her constant companion since her parents' death had finally begun to recede. In their place grew something fragile but precious. Hope. The delegation arrived the next morning, 3 stern-faced men in expensive suits, accompanied by Victor Reed, whose smug expression suggested he expected an easy victory. Jack greeted them formally, offering tours of both the northern and southern routes. We'll start with Reed's proposed path, the lead railroad man decided. Then compare it with yours. As they prepared to depart, Emma impulsively stepped forward. Sir, you should know something about the northern route. Reed's face darkened. This is men's business, girl. Let her speak, the railroad man said, curious. The northern route crosses traditional Blackfoot hunting grounds, Emma explained, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Chief Running Elk's people have treaty rights to those lands. My father has documentation of the boundaries recognized by the government. The railroad men exchanged concerned glances. Is this true, Reed? You assured us there would be no tribal complications. Reed's confident facade cracked. The girl doesn't know what she's talking about. The tribes can be bought off. Not the Blackfoot, Jack interjected firmly. Not Running Elk, but the southern route avoids their territory entirely. By sunset, the matter was all but decided. The railroad would take Jack's proposed southern route, ensuring both Timber Creek's survival and the respect of Blackfoot territorial rights. As Reed stormed away, defeated, the camp erupted in celebration. Amidst the jubilation, Emma found herself surrounded by grateful lumberjacks, each wanting to thank the boss's clever daughter who had helped save their livelihoods. For perhaps the first time in her life, Emma felt truly seen and valued for her mind, not just tolerated for her usefulness. Later, as the celebration continued in the cookhouse, Jack found Emma sitting quietly on the steps. Not enjoying the party? He asked. Just thinking, she replied, about how much has changed since winter. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Life's like that sometimes. Changes come fast like spring after a hard freeze. I was sold for $500, Emma said softly. But I think I found something worth much more. What's that? She looked up at the big man who had become her father in every way that mattered. A home. A real one. April brought renewal to Timber Creek. The last patches of snow retreated beneath an increasingly confident sun. Wildflowers appeared in forest clearings, and the creek itself swelled with snowmelt, its voice changing from winter's whisper to spring's exuberant chatter. For Emma, now officially 13, the season brought changes equally profound. We need to make it legal, Jack had announced one morning over breakfast. The adoption, if you're agreeable. Emma had nearly dropped her fork in surprise. Though she'd been living as Jack's daughter for months, the idea of making it official binding in the eyes of the law had never been discussed. You want to adopt me, truly? Jack's weathered face creased with affection. Been meaning to bring it up. Thomas is riding to Helena next week for supplies. Thought we might go along, see the judge, make you a Miller proper. So it was that Emma found herself in the territorial capital, wide-eyed at the bustle of the growing city. The adoption proceedings themselves were surprisingly brief. A few questions from a kindly judge, signatures on documents, and suddenly she was no longer Emma Lancaster, but Emma Miller, legal daughter of John Big Jack Miller of Timber Creek. How does it feel? Jack asked as they emerged from the courthouse into the spring sunshine. Emma considered the question carefully. Official, she finally answered. Like no one can take me away now. Jack's expression darkened momentarily. No one was going to take you away, official papers or not. I know, Emma said, slipping her small hand into his massive one. But now everyone else knows it too. Their return to Timber Creek coincided with an unexpected visitor, a slight, elegantly dressed woman who introduced herself as Miss Catherine Hartford, representative of the Helena Educational Society. "We've established a scholarship for promising young women," she explained to Jack as they sat in his cabin. "Dr. Henry wrote to us about your daughter's exceptional aptitude for mathematics and sciences. We'd like to offer her a place at the Westridge Academy for Girls." Emma froze, her heart suddenly racing. Westridge was the finest girls' school in the territory, perhaps in the entire Northwest. Under normal circumstances, a logging camp orphan would never be considered for admission. "It's a boarding school," Miss Hartford continued. "The fall term begins in September. All expenses would be covered by the scholarship, of course." Jack's expression remained carefully neutral. "That's a generous offer, but Emma has a home here." "Of course," Miss Hartford agreed smoothly. "But consider her future, Mr. Miller. A girl of her intelligence deserves opportunities that Timber Creek simply cannot provide." Emma looked between Miss Hartford and Jack, uncertainty churning within her. The prospect of a formal education was thrilling. All those books, proper teachers, girls her own age to befriend. Yet the thought of leaving Timber Creek, leaving Jack, filled her with unexpected dread. "I think this is a decision Emma should consider carefully," Jack said finally. "May we have some time?" "Certainly. The scholarship offer remains open until June. Please write to me when you've decided." Miss Hartford handed Jack a card with her details. "But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this are rare, especially for—" She hesitated, glancing around the simple cabin. Young ladies in remote circumstances. After she departed, a heavy silence fell between Jack and Emma. "You should go," Jack said eventually, his voice gruff with emotion. "It's the chance of a lifetime." "But I just became your daughter," Emma protested. "Officially. And that doesn't change whether you're here or at some fancy school in Helena." Jack moved to the window, staring out at the camp. "I told you when I brought you here that I wanted you to become whoever you're meant to be. Maybe this is part of that." The prospect of the Westridge Academy dominated Emma's thoughts in the weeks that followed. She discussed it endlessly with Doc Henry, who strongly advocated for her acceptance of the scholarship. "You've got a gift," he insisted. "I've taught you all I can, but there's so much more you could learn with proper schooling." Cook, on the other hand, was vehemently opposed. "What nonsense! Girl doesn't need fancy book learning to be happy. Got everything she needs right here." The Lumberjacks were divided, some seeing the opportunity as too good to refuse, others selfishly wanting to keep their Emma at Timber Creek. Thomas, ever practical, pointed out that the school year included lengthy holidays when she would return home. "Home," Emma repeated, the word catching in her throat. "That's just it, Thomas. This is home now." As spring deepened toward summer, Emma's decision remained unmade. She filled pages of her journal with lists of reasons to go or stay. Yet clarity eluded her. The deadline for responding to Miss Hartford loomed ever closer. One warm evening in late May, Emma found herself wandering to the edge of camp, following the creek upstream to a small clearing she'd discovered during her explorations. A fallen log provided a perfect seat, and she often came here to think and write in her journal. To her surprise, she found Jack already there, whittling a piece of pine with his pocket knife. "Great minds," he smiled, making room for her on the log. "Come to think about your big decision?" Emma nodded, settling beside him. "I'm torn. The school sounds wonderful, but ... "But you're afraid of leaving," Jack finished for her. "Afraid things might change between us." "Yes," she admitted. "What if I go away and when I come back, everything's different? What if you—" She hesitated, voicing her deepest fear. "What if you realize you don't want a daughter after all?" Jack set aside his whittling and turned to face her fully. "Emma Miller, listen to me. Before you came, I was half alive. Going through the motions, running this camp because I didn't know what else to do with myself after Sarah and my wife died. You didn't just fill a hole in my life, you made me remember what it was to truly live, to care about something beyond the next timber contract." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as Jack continued. Nothing, not distance, not time, not all the fancy education in the world, will change the fact that you are my daughter. Not by blood, but by choice. And that's stronger than any bond that chance can create. You really think I should go? Emma whispered. I think you should decide for yourself, Jack replied. But know this, whether you're here or in Helena, Timber Creek will always be your home, and I will always be your father. Something settled in Emma's heart at his words, a certainty that had eluded her for weeks. Suddenly, the decision seemed clear. I want to go, she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I want to learn everything I can. And then I want to bring that knowledge back here, to help Timber Creek grow and thrive. Jack's smile was bittersweet. Then that's what you'll do. The summer passed in a blur of preparations. Emma received her formal acceptance to Westridge Academy, along with a list of required items that sent Jack into a panic of shopping in Helena. New dresses, shoes, books, trunks, expenses he weathered without complaint, though Emma knew the scholarship didn't cover these personal necessities. The camp organized a farewell celebration the night before her departure, a feast of venison, trout, and Cook's famous berry pies. The Lumberjacks presented her with a collectively crafted gift, a beautiful wooden desk, designed to fold for travel, with her initials inlaid in contrasting woods. For all that studying you'll be doing, Thomas explained as she admired their handiwork, something to remind you of home. Doc Henry gave her a comprehensive medical reference book. Just in case your interest in medicine continues, he said with a wink. The world needs female doctors. The morning of departure arrived too soon. Emma's trunks were loaded onto the wagon, farewells were said, and many tears shed, not all of them Emma's, and suddenly it was time to leave. Jack would drive her to Helena, see her settled at the school, then return to Timber Creek alone. As the wagon pulled away, Emma turned for one last look at the place that had saved her, the rough-hewn buildings, the towering pines, the men standing in a solemn group, waving until she was out of sight. She clutched her journal to her chest, feeling the weight of all it contained, her journey from unwanted niece to beloved daughter. I was thinking, Jack said as they descended the mountain road toward the wider world beyond. The school year ends in June. That's only 9 months. 9 months and 6 days, Emma corrected, having counted precisely. Jack chuckled. Of course you know to the day. What I'm saying is, it's not forever. Before you know it, you'll be back home for the summer. And then what? Emma asked. Back to school in September? That's up to you, Jack replied. 1 year at a time, see how you like it. The camp will always be there. I'll always be there. Emma nodded, drawing comfort from his certainty. They rode in companionable silence for several miles before she spoke again. Jack, Father? He glanced at her, surprise and pleasure at the title evident in his expression. Yes? Thank you. For buying me that day. For seeing something in me worth $500. Jack's hands tightened on the reins. Emma, what I saw in you that day was something no amount of money could ever measure. And what I found in you since then, your courage, your intelligence, your heart, well, that's beyond price altogether. As they continued their journey toward Helena and the new chapter awaiting her, Emma opened her journal to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote a single sentence. I was sold for $500, but I found something priceless, a father who taught me my true worth. The wagon rolled on, carrying her away from Timber Creek, but Emma felt no fear. She knew now what Jack had been trying to tell her all along. Home wasn't just a place. It was the people who loved you, the memories you carried, the knowledge that somewhere in the world, someone was waiting for your return. And for a girl who had once been property to be bartered, that certainty was the greatest treasure of all.